Hey, what's up guys, it's Darkroom Duels, and today we're going to be doing a Sky Striker deck profile. So Sky Striker is a really awesome deck that basically focuses around going into Link 1s to be able to overwhelm your opponent with all sorts of different card advantage. And I'm really excited to do this deck because this deck is a really fun deck to be able to play around with. So without further ado guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell near so you can become part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below for all those awesome rewards, like getting your name screwed to every single video, getting a signed card sent in the mail, and even getting to request a deck profile every single month to your patron along with test hands. So without further ado, let's get straight on into this. So first off, we're going to be playing 3 copies of Sky Striker Ace Ray. So Sky Striker Ace Ray is the main card that you're going to be using in this deck. And if you guys are unfamiliar with what this card does, you get to quick effect tribute this card to special summon 1 Sky Striker Ace monster from your X deck to the extra monster zone. And then while this card is in your graveyard, if a face-up Sky Striker Ace Link monster you control is destroyed by battle or leaves the field because of an opponent's card effect, you can instantly special this card from the graveyard. So it's a really amazing card because basically she drops the suit of armor and just summons herself back to your side of the field to be able to go into an additional Link play, giving her another suit of armor, which is really amazing. We then play 2 copies of Sky Striker Ace Rose. Rose is really good too, just as a 2 of in my opinion. I really like playing 2 of this card because if a Sky Striker Ace monster is normally special summon, except during the damage step, then you can special summon this card from your hand as well. And if an opponent's monster is in the extra monster zone, is destroyed by battle, or leaves the field because of an opponent's card effect while this card's in the graveyard, you can special summon this card. And then you can negate the effects of 1 face-up monster your opponent controls, which is pretty good just to help you go into additional plays and give you an additional special summon to go into additional Link plays in the deck. We then play a single copy of Dino Wrestler Prankatops. Prankatops is really good because what this card is basically a Cyber Dragon that can tribute itself to be able to pop a card on the field, which is pretty good to be able to just pop an opponent's card and give you a 2600 body just in case you need it. Then we play double Gamma Seal as well. Gamma Seal is just basically here to get out stuff like Dragoons and out problematic cards that your opponent's potentially going to be playing against you. This card is super helpful, especially with it just being a 2200 attack point monster. This deck can really easily get through that. So it's an overall really easy card to get through over like a Dragoons. We then play double Nibiru. Double Nibiru is really nice too because if your opponent's going to go full combo, then you've got the Nibirus to be able to stop your opponent from going crazy, and where this deck is going to try and kind of slowly whittle your opponent down with all the spell effects. This card is going to be super helpful to be able to just out 1 Nibiru token that's basically not protecting itself, which is really nice. We then play 2 copies of Ghostbelt and Haunted Mansion. This is a really great hand trap, especially in today's format, because when a card or effect is activated, including any of the cards or any of these effects, quick effect, you get to discard this card, and it basically stops your opponent from doing anything in the graveyard because it stops your opponent from adding cards from the graveyard to their hand deck or extra deck, special summoning a monster from the graveyard, or banishing cards from the graveyard, which is really helpful from like Eldritch and even Drytron, going to be meta soon again. This deck is really good and well equipped to deal with both of those. We then play 3 copies, excuse me, of Ash Blossom. Ash Blossom is really nice too because it's the overall best hand trap in my opinion, just to be able to stop your opponent from all sorts of different stuff. So that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get into the spells, because the spells is where this deck starts to really ramp up and start to exceed. So we're going to be playing a single copy of Sky Striker Hornet Drones. Hornet Drones is basically just going to give you a token on your side of the field that you're going to be able to use the token to link summon into something like a Kagari to be able to get you additional plays. We play a single copy of Eagle Booster. Now, Eagle Booster is a card that I considered cutting, but I really like to play it as a 1-of, and all of your Sky Striker spells have the ability that if you control no monsters in your main monster zone, you can activate them, because they kind of have that one little restriction that you can't have a monster in your main monster zone to activate them. And then if you have 3 or more spells, you gain additional effects. So what this card does is basically you get to target 1 face-up monster on the field, and that target is unaffected by other card effects. And if you have 3 or more spells in the graveyard, it can't be destroyed by battle either. So it basically makes it invincible, which is super nice. We see a copy of Jamming Waves. Jamming Waves, if you control no monsters, then you can target 1 set spell or trap on the field and destroy it. And if you have 3 or more, then you can destroy 1 monster on the field as well, which is pretty good. We play a single copy of Hercules Base. Hercules Base is really good because you get to activate this card. You control no monster in your main monster zone, and the equipped monster can't attack directly, but it can make a second attack on monsters during each battle phase. And if the equipped monster destroys a monster by battle while you have 3 or more spells in the graveyard, you get to draw a card. And then when this card is sent from the field to the graveyard by a card effect, then you can target up to 3 Sky Striker cards in the graveyard and shuffle them into the deck, which is super nice to get you to be able to reuse them over and over again. We then play a single copy of Multi-Roll, because Multi-Roll is still at 1. And what this card does is basically gives you free uses for additional spells to be able to go into the grind game. I could actually see this card going back to 2 on the next list, and I don't think it would really hurt anything. What this card does actually is you can get to quick effect, you get to once per turn, target one other card you control and send that target to the graveyard. And also your opponent going to activate cards and effects in response to your spell activations for the rest of the turn. So it basically makes all of your spells speed spell 4, which is pretty good. And then once per turn during the end phase, you can set Sky Striker spells with different names from your graveyard up to the number of spell or trap cards, or excuse me, Sky Striker spells you activated this turn. Well, this card was faceable on the field, but banish them when they leave the field. So basically gives you second uses for all of your Sky Striker spells or traps, which is really, really powerful. We then played 2 copies of Sky Striker Airspace, which is the field spell. Area 0 is really good because it lets you target one other card you control and excavate the top 3 off your deck. And if you do, you add 1 excavated Sky Striker spell or trap or spell card from your hand, which is pretty good to add any of the Sky Striker spells because you can add Ray as well, but usually you're adding the spells. But also what it does is if you excavate a Sky Striker card, you send the rest of the cards to the graveyard, or you send this targeted card to the graveyard. And in this card in the field spell zone is sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you can special summon a Sky Striker Ace monster from your deck, which is pretty good, which is why I say you don't really want to excavate the Sky Striker Ray. You usually want to get the spells, is because if this card is sent to the graveyard, which you can target itself, you just can basically, or you can't target itself, but you can target another card. If this card is sent to the graveyard, you then get to special summon Ace Ray anyway. So this card is just not great to be able to just target, to be able to send to the graveyard. We then played 3 copies of Maneuver. Maneuver is just really, really good. Maneuver at 3 is something that I really, really, really like, because if you control no monsters in your main monster zone, you get to target 1 face-up monster on the field and destroy it. And you have 3 or more spells or traps or spells in the graveyard, you get to target a spell or trap on the field and destroy it as well, which is really nice. I love the fact to be able to pop like an additional monster on the field. It kind of makes me feel like, kind of makes me think of the Magical Musketeer Desperado, but in spell form, which is really, really awesome. To be able to just pop monsters and disrupt your opponent is just really nice. The only thing that I wish it was a quick play spell, because then it would be really insane. We then play 3 copies of Shark Cannon. Shark Cannon is something that I love as a 3 of, because if you control no monsters, then you can target 1 monster in your opponent's graveyard and banish it. And then if you have 3 or more spells in the graveyard, you can special summon that monster to your field instead, which can be really, really pivotal to be able to grab something out of your opponent's graveyard, especially if you're trying to link climb. This card can be really, really helpful. We then play 3 copies of Widow Anchor to round out the Sky Striker spells. This card is really, really, really good to be able to put in your deck, because basically what Widow Anchor does is it's the most powerful of them all. Because if you control no monsters, then you can target 1 face-up monster your opponent controls and negate that face-up monster's effects. And if you have 3 or more spells, you get to take control of that monster, which is really, really insane. So you're popping monsters during your turn, you're taking your opponent's monsters during their turn, you're taking cards out of their graveyard and putting them on your field. Like, this deck is really, really good at just utilizing your opponent's cards against them, which is super nice. But as you grind on into the game, and you have more spells in the graveyard, this deck gets more insane, which is really amazing. So that's it for the spells, guys. Let's get into the other spells that are not Sky Striker spells. So for the other spells, we're going to be playing a single copy of Monster Reborn. We don't play any traps in the deck, so you're just playing a single copy of Monster Reborn just to kind of help you get your copy of Ace Ray back on your side of the field. 1 copy of Rhoda, because it's like playing an additional Ray in your deck. 1 copy of Raigeki. Raigeki is pretty good because it can just pop your opponent's field. I really hate dealing with my opponent's monsters in this deck, so using Raigeki is just really nice. 1 copy of Terraforming, because it gets you to your field spell. The field spell is pretty good because you want to get to it to be able to then excavate cards, which is what's really nice about it. But you don't want to excavate Ray, because when you pop it, it goes off. But playing this, basically you're playing an additional spell, which is super nice. 1 copy of Pot of Avarice. Pot of Avarice lets you shuffle 5 monsters from your graveyard back into your deck and then draw 2, which can be really nice because you're going to go through your extra monsters pretty quickly, like your link monsters really quickly. So playing this card is really, really nice to be able to go into additional plays and kind of reset to go into more plays in the deck. We then play 2 copies of Desires, because I'm not super concerned about what I banish in this deck. because there's not really anything that I'm like, oh, I banished it, that sucks, because I have multiple copies of everything. As long as I have at least a Rose and a Ray in the deck, I'm usually going to be okay. We then play 2 copies of Cosmic Cyclone just to deal with my opponent's back row, especially if they're playing like Mystic Mine. You can deal with it with this card. Now, I don't play Mystic Mine because I don't like Mystic Mine. You can play it in here. I mean, I wouldn't recommend it, but you can play Mystic Mine in here as well. But this card is basically here just to deal with my opponent's Mystic Mine, so I don't have to play against it. So that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, we're going to be playing 3 copies of Kangari. Kangari is really, really, really good. Kangari is going to be the main play starter of the entire deck, because if this card is special summon, you get to target a Sky Striker spell in the graveyard and add it back to your hand, and it gains 100 attack for each spell in the graveyard, which is really, really good to be able to just get you additional plays. You have to use 1 non-fire Sky Striker ace monster to go into this card, which is usually going to be your copy of Ray, because you're going to normal summon Ray and then immediately go for Kangari to recover a spell from the graveyard to then get you additional plays. We then play 3 copies of Shizuku. Shizuku is also really, really good. This is going to be your end phase. You're going to go Kangari and then Shizuku. And monster your opponent control lose 100 attack for each spell in the graveyard. And then once per turn during the end phase, if this card was special summon, you get to add a Sky Striker spell from your deck to your hand with a different name from cards in your graveyard, which is pretty good because it gives you additional search, and it's very balanced because you get to add a different one. You can't add one that you've already used from the graveyard, which also really helps out the deck. And then we play 3 copies of Hayate. Hayate is going to be the main push of the deck, because what this card does is you can only special summon this card once per turn, and this card can attack your opponent directly, and after damage calculation this card battled, you can send a Sky Striker card from your deck to the graveyard, which is pretty nice. We then play a single copy of Kaina. Kaina is just a one-of. I wouldn't play Kaina at any more than 1. She has the ability, if this card is special summon, you can target a monster your opponent controls. It can attack until the end of the opponent's turn, and each time you activate a Sky Striker spell, you gain 100 life points, which is okay, but you just really need the one-of with this card. And then I play a single copy of Zeke as well. Zeke is just a one-of to me as well, because it must be link summon, and you can only special summon this card once per turn. If this card is link summon, you can target 1 face-up monster on the field and banish it until your opponent's next end phase, and then once per turn, you can target 1 other card you control. This card gains 1,000 attack, and then send the target to the graveyard, which works really well with the field spell. We then play for the other link monsters. I'm playing a single copy of Phoenix just to give me pops for spells and traps. 1 copy of Unicorn to give me, because it spins. A single copy of Ningirsu. Ningirsu, the World Chalice Warrior, is really good in the deck too, because it gives you an additional attribute. Because you're already playing fire, water, wind, earth, fire, water, wind, earth, and dark, but the earth one's not so great. So playing World Chalice Warrior is really nice. It does take 2 link monsters to summon this, but the majority of the time you're going to use 2 link monsters anyways. In this card's link summon, you can draw a card's equal number of World Chalice monsters this card points to. But the big effect of this card is it gets to pop a card, because once per turn you can send a card from either player's field to the graveyard. Because it's non-targeting, you just get to send it from the field to the graveyard, which is really nice. And then we play a copy of Access Code, because Access Code is going to be kind of the big boss of the deck, because you're going to try and summon Access Code all the time to be able to pop additional cards against your opponent, which is super nice. It doesn't come up all the time, because usually you can with Kangari and Hayate and Shizuku, but if it does come up when you use stuff like Widow Anchor and your copy of Shark Cannon as well, that's when you actually will go into your copy of Access Code. So that's it for the deck, guys. I hope you did enjoy it. It's a really fun deck to play with. Hopefully we get some of the cards, like our copy of Multi-Roll, back to maybe 3, or maybe the next ban list. Hopefully I could see that happening, and I don't think it would really hurt that much of the meta. I think that would just make the deck a little bit more consistent, which the deck does need. It's still fun to play, and I really enjoy playing Sky Striker, but it's a little bit fragile with the multi-roll being at 1. So anyways, guys, this is Dark Arm Duels. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell there so you can become part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.